Hey everyone, it's me, Jeremy Parish, your favorite guy named Jeremy Parish. And I'm going to take another crack at this Gintendo Let's Play thing, another crack at this Mega Man 30th anniversary tribute thing. I've tried a couple times already to do a Let's Play live stream and a Let's Play video, and every time I have audio issues. So instead of trying and failing to record something about this game as I play it, I have played it, and now I'm going to say something about it over the footage. We'll see how this goes. This could be a disaster or it could be very good. Anyway, so enough preamble. This is Mega Man. Mega Man turns 30 years old this weekend, and that's kind of crazy to think, but the series apparently is still alive and well. There's been a couple of compilations come out recently. There's one coming out next year, and then let's see, there's Mega Man 11 coming out next year also. Anyway, the original Mega Man came out 30 years ago, December 17th, 1987, and right here from the very beginning, you start the game and you can kind of see the premise of the original Mega Man. You start with just a stage select screen, and you get to see the boss that you're going to fight, and from there you pick the order in which you play the game. Each time you beat a boss, you earn his weapon, and you can use that against other bosses. The character's name in Japan, Mega Man, was Rockman, and that's a pun. His sister's name is Roll, and when he's not Rockman, he's just Rock, so, rock and roll, ha ha ha. His brother's name is Blues, his dog's name is Rush, although that actually is not a joke on the band Rush. Anyway, so there's the rock and roll aspect, but also Rockman refers to rock, paper, and scissors, which is a very popular little diversion in Japanese video games. Xenogears had the rock, paper, scissors badge, and it's just like one of those basic things you see. There's Alex Kidd games that have Jonkin, also is what they call it in Japan. So you fight as Rockman, and there's no Paper Man or Scissors Man, but there is Cut Man, who wields scissors, and Guts Man, who throws rocks. And yes, the rocks that Guts Man can throw are especially effective against Cut Man's scissors. So you get that little bit of rock, paper, scissors there, and from that germ of inspiration, you have Capcom coming up with a franchise that would run for, I don't know if you want to consider the sequels and spin-offs, something like 50 or 60 games, plus anthologies and remakes and yada yada yada. It's been pretty lively. That's a lot to mine out of a fairly simple concept, in my opinion. So anyway, this first stage is Bomb Man stage. Bomb Man's weapon, his Hyper Bomb, I want to say what it's called, is especially effective against Guts Man, but you don't really know that the first time you play the game. The game starts you out with, that title screen, and all you know is that there's a bunch of guys with weird names, and you have to fight them. So the game by default kind of sends you to, well, it doesn't send you, but the default position for the cursor is Cut Man. So that's the first stage I think most people play the first time they play this game. Although it turns out that's not the easiest stage, and he's not the easiest fight. So basically you reach the end of the stage, there's these little connecting corridors, and that leads you to a lair and a showdown with the boss. So Bomb Man has his own health bar, like Mega Man, and as you can see, he has a very annoying pattern. He just jumps around Mega Man until Mega Man shoots him. But he leaps around, throws bombs, and you have to avoid the bombs while shooting at him. And once you whittle down his health like that, you get a little item drop, and congratulations, you're moving along. Now, if you have beaten Fireman before you fight Bomb Man, then you can use the Fireman weapon, whatever it's called. I keep forgetting. You can use his weapon against Bomb Man, and Bomb Man takes like 3 hits. But Bomb Man's a pretty easy fight to take on first. Like, you definitely don't want to take on Elecman or Iceman or Fireman first, because they're crazy hard. But now that we have the weapon that Guts Man is weak to, we'll go on to Guts Man's stage. And it's actually a pretty short level, but it's not a good stage to fight your first time through because of these things right here. There's these lifts, and the first one you jump onto is very easy, but this one's really tricky because when the lift moves across the gap right there, where the wire is worn through, it wants to drop you, and it takes a while to master that technique. That's a very challenging thing the first time you play Mega Man, and there's a special weapon you can get that lets you create your own platforms, and I think that's what most people do before they can take on Gutsman, because that section is really difficult, and it's repeated again at the very end of the game, so that kind of tells you how difficult it is. It's a thing they show you at the end of the game. Anyway, right here you see sort of game design in action. I'm not sure why I paused there, but you have those 3 guys with the picks, and each encounter was a little more challenging than last. Now you have a 4th guy with a pick, and you don't have to face him over a pit, so he's a little bit easier, which is nice. And right here I'm about to screw up, I think. Yeah, for some reason, even though I was pressing to the left, the game didn't register it correctly, so villain to spikes. Spikes kill you instantly, which has led very, very smart people to say, why doesn't Dr. Wily, the villain of this piece, just create his stages and robots entirely out of spikes? And to you I say, shut up, that's not very fun. Then there is the big eye, not the big guy, the big eye, who is very annoying. He'll jump high and he jumps low, and there's no way to tell which he's going to do. So you have to run underneath him to get to safety because he takes a lot of hits with every weapon. And if you take a hit, he knocks off like a third of your health. It's a very difficult challenge. Anyway, here's the hallway leading to Gutsman. And Gutsman, of course, has the ability to throw rocks like that. His weapon is called the Super Arm, and that's what he does. He just throws rocks at you. The only way you can really beat him is to throw the Hyper Bomb from Bomb Man, which will usually hit him in the splash damage zone if you're good. And since Gutsman pretty much just stands in place and jumps up and down, it's actually pretty easy to beat him with the imprecise Hyper Bomb. And so once he's down with 3 hits, it's all good, and you can move along to the next stage. Like I said, the bad guy who is weak to Gutsman's Super Arm is Cutman, rock versus scissors. So Cutman is the next stage to a tackle. And if you play the stage, you know, as the very first thing you do, it might be kind of challenging because there's the upper level, the lower level. Those bricks right there can actually be picked up and thrown with the Super Arm, which you wouldn't realize if you hadn't, you know, actually beaten Gutsman. I guess I should have showed it off, but I am so used to playing it a certain way that it's sometimes hard for me to get out of my rut. So anyway, those little flying guys are kind of interesting because they appeared in both Gutsman's stage and here, but with sort of a different design philosophy. Like on Gutsman's stage, they're all kind of above you, and here they're more like below you, so you have to kind of watch out and approach them in a different way, even though they're the same enemies, appearing in the same formation and attack with the same pattern. Also, you'll notice that enemies drop objects. Sometimes they drop little round balls, and all those do is give you points. This is the only Mega Man game that has a score, and those little balls are weapon or power-ups that only appear in this game. All they do is give you points. They're lame. You also get, yeah, there's a ball, it's lame. You also get little white orbs, little pills kind of looking things. Those give you health, and then there are sort of, yeah, that's health, which I just wasted. And that little blue thing that just dropped is to refill weapon power. So as you switch to special weapons and use them, you drain the weapon's power, and it has to be recharged. And you have to actually have a weapon active in order to be able to recharge it with those pickups. I think Mega Man 7 introduced the energy balancer, which allows you to pick up weapon energy, and it'll automatically go to whatever has the least energy at the time without you having to select that weapon, which is kind of cool. Which is, you know, Mega Man 7 has a few good ideas, but it's not the best game. You can read more about my thoughts on Mega Man 7 at Polygon.com if you want. I put together a ranking of the core Mega Man games, the classic platformers, and Mega Man 7 did not rate high. It is butt. The thing about Mega Man 7 though is that it was developed by an external studio initially, and they made such a mess of it that Capcom's internal team stepped in and had to finish it up, and they had like 3 months to get it all together, according to one of the guys who worked on it, who now is the fellow who runs Inti Creates, who has, you know, been a partner with Capcom on many Mega Man games since then, so clearly he knows what he's talking about. You can see a variety of different enemies here, different patterns. You've seen these little flying guys who shoot in 8 directions in Bomb Man stage, but here it's a little more challenging to face them because you're kind of navigating platforms and spikes, and so you have to watch out. And then there's that guy who always sucks, and I hate him. He's not fun. Those guys would not appear in many more Mega Man games because they're not good. So one more hall. Each hall has its own, leading up to the boss, has its own set of enemies. First one had, those little moving guys who went back and forth. All right, switching to Super Arm. Yeah, so the thing about Super Arm is it's not a weapon that allows you to attack directly. You have to find ammunition in the environment, in which case, in this case, it's the blocks in the room, and it's very foolish for Cutman to occupy a layer that contains the weapon objects to which he is weak. But I guess Dr. Wily didn't invent him for his brains. Oh wait, Dr. Wily didn't invent Cutman. That was Dr. Light. So there you go. All right, Cutman is effective against Elecman. I don't know why. I guess the idea is like you're cutting wires? Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so one of the cool things about this stage is that, you know, in some of the stages you get little hints of what weapon is going to be good against the boss. And in this case, you get a clue right here that Cutman is going to be effective later, because the enemies that you're facing, those little guys sliding back and forth, they can only be destroyed with the rolling cutter, Cutman's weapon. So that's handy. It's a nice little tip-off. It also is a way to whittle down your energy reserves for that weapon, which I guess is not cool. But there are enough opportunities to refill your health throughout that it's fine. So Mega Man is famously blue. He's a blue character, which made him kind of unusual for NES games. And I don't think Capcom was necessarily looking to create a unique character, a unique looking character. They just wanted to have a character who made use of the NES hardware's abilities, and it turns out, according to, I think, Keiji Inafune, the character designer, it turns out the NES has more shades of blue available than any other color, so that's what Capcom went with. And he's got his little blue trunks. He's not wearing underwear on the outside. Those are trunks, like wrestling trunks. That's right. And I mentioned this in a stream that I hosted before, but the sound quality was really bad, so I'll rehash some of that content. One of the interesting things about Mega Man's design is that he is a lot more complicated in terms of the sprite objects that he consists of than you might think at first. So the NES uses, you know, sprites or moving objects on the screen. Anything you see here that moves, such as Mega Man, enemies, weapons, and even those electrical beams, those are all sprites, moving objects. And the system can only have, I think, 8 sprites in a row, a single line of the screen. Sprites on the NES are 8 pixels by 8 pixels. Mega Man is, you know, when he's standing, he's 16 pixels wide and 24 pixels tall. So right there, he's 6 sprites. And when he throws stuff like that, he's actually, I think, 3 sprites wide. So That's why you see flicker a lot. This is a lovely 60 frames per second video, so yeah, you see the system dropping frames and sprites vanishing. If you see Mega Man standing in line with like those electrical beams, and that's just because the system can't draw a ton. It can only, like I said, draw 8 by 8 sprites on a single line, a single horizontal line. It doesn't have the same limits with vertical design though. Anyway, so as I was saying about Mega Man, he, you know, standing still, he's basically 6 sprites, or that would appear to be the case. But in fact, Mega Man actually has more colors than the NES is able to display with sprites at a time. Each sprite on the NES could only have 4 colors assigned to it, and transparency is a color. So you have transparency, you have black outline, you have 2 shades of blue. Well, Mega Man's face is also white and flesh tone. So in order to make that work, Capcom actually layered sprites on top of Mega Man. So his head looks like 2 sprites, but it's actually 4, with the helmet and outline as 1 layer, and then his face and eyeballs as another layer on top of that. And the NES allowed people to assign priority to sprites, saying like these sprites will always show up first. So Mega Man's eye, like his face sprites, they have the most priority, so they don't vanish. So you never really see like his face flicker out and show his helmet underneath, even when there's, you know, sprite collisions and stuff like that. So if you see his face flickering when he's standing in a line with the Lek Man, you don't really see his eyes like vanish while his head stays back there. So they did a great job of sort of determining, you know, like prioritizing his sprites. So there's a lot of artistry put into Mega Man's design in this game, which I think is really overlooked a lot. But I mean, when you think about it, Mega Man's basic sprite was used with almost no modifications through 6 NES games, 5 Game Boy games, and then they revisited it for Mega Man 9 and 10. That is a lot of games using the same sprite that was invented 30 years ago. So you have to kind of give it up for them. They really didn't change that much about Mega Man. Look at Mario. His sprite constantly changes, or constantly changed back in the days when he was a 2D sprite. So A+, Akira Kitamura and Keiji Inafune, who did a very good job making this tiny robot boy, even if he is a total Astro Man ripoff, or Astro Boy ripoff. Astro Man is another character in Mega Man. That's how I got that confused. So this is Iceman stage. Iceman is weak to Elecman. I didn't comment on Elecman during that battle because it was over so quickly, but he's one of the hardest robots to fight, just, you know, if you take him on first, because he shoots this beam of electricity that has a very wide sort of beam, like the way it moves up and down, the sinuous sine wave look to it. And it takes off like a third of Mega Man's health, which I guess makes sense because, you know, Mega Man's a robot, so electricity is going to hurt. But you don't want to fight him just without the weapon that is good against him. So the Rolling Cutter, fortunately, can take him out in 3 hits. And that's why I always fight Cutman before Elecman. Alright, and this is I guess the debut of vanishing blocks in Mega Man. We did see them a little bit in Elecman stage, but they weren't nearly as egregious as this. And vanishing blocks are the bane of every Mega Man player's existence. Look at that. Look at the trouble I'm having playing the game, getting on these friggin' vanishing blocks. Thank you so much. Fortunately, this game does give you a remedy for vanishing blocks. There are some games that specifically sort of predict that you're going to try to circumvent the vanishing blocks and are like, no, you can't do that. Oh, that's the Elect Beam. See, she shoots 3 directions and is very helpful for taking out low enemies and that sort of thing. Anyway, so I cheat like a jerk here and just skip right past that. With the Magnet Beam, which I picked up in Elecman stage, I didn't comment on that, but you have to have either the Elect Beam, the whatever the hell it's called, or Gutsman's Super Arm to be able to get it because it's hidden behind a wall. And if you don't get it, then you have to go back to Elecman stage and find it later because it is actually required to get through Dr. Wily stage. But this part I always just cheat past with the Magnet Beam because those little dudes, the platforms, like it seems fine to ride platforms across a pit, but then the platforms are shooting at you and trying to knock you off. And they're also very glitchy, and sometimes the collision detection just doesn't work right, and you will, for no reason of your no fault of your own, fall to your death. And that's garbage. So use the Magna Beam, kids. Stay in school. Another big guy. I think there's only one stage, Bomb Man stage, that doesn't have these guys. They also suck. They were still kind of figuring out the details in this game. This part I like, this hallway, because this section with a narrow hall and penguins will be repeated later in Dr. Wily's stage. They took elements of, some of the 6 opening stages and throw them into the final stages, which is really cool. It's, good design to kind of revisit an old challenge and force you to tackle it in a new way with new knowledge. But as you can see, Iceman, his ice slasher hits really hard if you get hit by it, but the elect beam, whatever it's called, it zaps him really hard, and you can actually take him out before his projectiles get to you, which is good to know. So that's 5 stages down. Now on to the last, it's Fireman. Despite his name, he does not put out fires, he causes them. I haven't really talked too much about the music in this game, but it was composed by a lady, 2 people, but most notably a lady named Manami Matsumae, who actually just released her first ever solo album, I believe. It seems like all the superstars of the NES era are kind of, all the superstar composers of the NES era are finally branching out and creating their own music. Hip Tanaka, or Hirokazu Tanaka, the composer of Metroid and many other beloved NES games by Nintendo, just released an album called Django, which is kind of like a hybrid of chiptunes and electronica. It's pretty good. I recommend it. I haven't listened to Matsumae's album yet, but I like her work a lot. She composed Mega Man, of course, and then she composed a few other Capcom games before moving along to Sunsoft, where she composed really great games like Trip World, which is extremely rare and expensive Game Boy game with a great soundtrack. No, Mega Man, you died! Oh my goodness, that's terrible. So let's see, there was Trip World, and I want to say she composed the soundtrack to Gimmick, but I don't think that's right. Anyway, she's made some really great 8-bit music in her day, and I interviewed her a few years ago. She dropped out of composing for games for a while because she wanted to start a family. So she took time off, took a couple years off, had a kid, and then came back and did a lot of freelance work. And I think she kind of made a big comeback into video games with Mega Man 9, what was that, 2008? And since then she's had kind of a presence. She composed for Shovel Knight. It's basically people who appreciate the artistry of these old games and can look past the fact that, oh, they look so simple. People like that they appreciate what's here, and they're like, yes, please bring that goodness to the game that we are creating. So that's great. It's good to see talented composers from back in the day able to make a living doing the work that they love and that they're good at. So that's basically my stage-long discourse on Manami Matsumae. Check out her album, whose name I have totally forgotten, but look it up, it's great. It's from Brave Wave Records, so that should help you. While we're doing pitches, I will also say, promotions, I will also say that as much as Fireman sucks, look at that, the way that flame shows up underneath Mega Man, it's so cheap. As much as he sucks, what doesn't suck is the ranking of classic Mega Man platformers I put together for Polygon. I mentioned this earlier, but I can't stress how much that list is completely great. I totally knocked it out of the park. You should definitely listen to it, or read it, sorry. It's at polygon.com, and I'm sure something that I wrote will make you angry. Anyway, here's Dr. Wily. He's going to get his revenge on me for ranking Mega Man 2 above Mega Man 3, because he's one of those people. So the way basically every Mega Man level works, or every Mega Man game works, is that you fight X number of robot masters, and once they're gone, Dr. Wily is revealed. And he is in some kind of crazy lair at the end, and it's multiple stages with a boss at the end of each one that you have to fight through, and it kind of reprises things you've seen before, challenges you've faced, and kind of, you know, it's an ultimate test of your skills that you developed through playing Mega Man to this point. So that is the deal with Dr. Wily here. And as you can see, you need basically every weapon to get through this part of the game. I used the Ice Slasher's secondary functioning earlier to freeze those big eyes in the air. Then I used the Super Arm to break into the lair. Like, you're literally pulling apart the walls of Dr. Wily's lair and busting into it that way, which is kind of cool. There's like a really high level concept working here that I think is great. This part's great too because you can also bust walls with the Elect Beam. I wanted to, you know, kind of conserve it. But in this case, it's great for busting those walls above you because once you use the Magnet Beam to climb up to that point, you can't switch over to the Super Arm. So it's the only way to get that precious pill of health. So this level, fairly, you know, fairly straightforward. You have to fight stuff, kill stuff, but it does get really hard later because there's cruel spikes and those Iceman floating platform things that shoot at you. And there's also a part where you have to have the Magnet Beam. If you don't have the Magnet Beam, you literally cannot complete the stage. So if you missed the Magnet Beam, you have to die, go back to the stage select screen, and start all over again. And this part seems like a little reprise of Bomb Man's area, and this part is Iceman's area, but with spikes. And as usual, just use the friggin' Magnet Beam to get past these guys because they are the worst and they will glitch you and kill you, and it sucks. But then you need the Magnet Beam for this room right here, where there's this tall shaft, like you literally can't get up there. I think Dr. Wily was like, Mega Man can rip his way into my castle, but can he climb? I think not. So the trick is to get up there, and that takes you to the gnarliest encounter in the game, which is the Yellow Devil. That sounds so offensive, doesn't it? Look at that, you can see me pausing as I build up the courage to take on the Yellow Devil. And I'm going to spoil it right now and say that I do not fare well in this battle, and that I die a few times, and I also don't fare well. I think that's correct. I'm trying to remember, but I've played through this twice now, and it took me a while to beat. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so basically he breaks into little pieces, flies across the room, and once he's completely formed, he takes a single shot at you, and during the time that he's shooting at you, his eye is vulnerable for about 1 second. So you have to avoid these objects that are flying across the room flawlessly because they hit really hard, avoid the bullet that he shoots at you, and as he's shooting a bullet at you, as he's shooting a bullet at you, you have to leap up and launch return fire. And as you can see, it's really hard to avoid the bullets, and little Mega Man's about to die. That right there is the hardest part. There's two pieces, low pieces, that fly in quick succession, and you have to do like a long jump over them. Anyway, I'm going to just jump ahead here because I died several times fighting the Yellow Devil. And then once I died, I had to continue and go back to the beginning of Dr. Wily's stage and fight my way back to the Yellow Devil. So here we go. I'm back. Oh, it's the Yellow Devil again. And even though I don't have full health, I think this is where I was able to beat him. Let's find out. I mean, once you get a handle on the order in which his little pieces fly across the room, it really becomes just a matter of dealing with the repetition of this stressful pattern over and over again, which isn't, you know, that impossible, but it can be kind of nerve-wracking. And I've noticed if you make a mistake, or if I make a mistake, I have a like that. I missed him. I can't believe that. I have a tendency to get rattled and then I screw up. And so, like, one little mistake cascades. Oh, look at that. That was pathetic. So boneheaded. If you shoot the wrong direction, then you're just out of luck. So, oh, look at that. Maybe this is not the time that I beat him. Yeah, you can only get one shot in. Now, there is a trick. There's a cheat. If you hit pause, there are two pause buttons in this game. There's the start button, which brings up the weapon select menu, and then there's the select button, which brings up the actual pause feature. If you pause the game with the select button, and then rapidly pause and unpause, every time you unpause, it will make his weak point vulnerable again. So if you're using the electric thunder shock or whatever it's called, there we go, he's dead. If you use the thunder shock, because it's so long and so wide, you can pause and rapidly unpause, and it will, as it works its way across the screen, every time you unpause, it will register a new hit. So you can actually defeat him like with one shot, but only by cheating. And I'm just too proud to do it. By God. All right, so this is the bridge across Dr. Wily's lair. I don't know what's underneath the bridge, but clearly it's nothing you want to deal with. So this is like the bridge into the inner sanctum. And if you look at the box art, the American box art of Mega Man, it's really terrible. Like, it was drawn by someone who maybe had never picked up artistic implements before. I don't know. But it's kind of amateurish looking. But if you look in the background, there is a surprisingly accurate version of Dr. Wily's stage. You can see the left tower, and then the bridge across, and then the right tower. It's like, you know, you seem to have barely drawn this thing with any sort of human competence, and yet you have accurately depicted the final stage of the game. Pretty crazy. Although I will say that there is kind of a giveaway in the Japanese manual. I think maybe the American manual shows the like an actual illustration by Keiji Inafune of the final stage. So I think he was just working from that. But still, it's such a weirdly specific thing to get right amidst all the other things that the box art gets wrong. And people make fun of the box art, but like legitimately, it made the game a hard sell back in the day. I did not even consider buying Mega Man. I remember seeing it at like Walmart and Toys R Us and thinking, oh, that looks terrible. That's so embarrassing. And it wasn't until Nintendo Power started to promote Mega Man 2, which looked freaking amazing, that I said, what is this Mega Man game? I should check it out. So I picked up a copy just before it went out of print. I think it was actually already out of print at that point, but they had one left over on clearance at like Walden Software. So I picked it up, and despite my misgivings about the artwork, I was impressed by the quality of the game, and it's been a favorite ever since. Now, this game did not rank super high on my rankings for Polygon, but the remake, Mega Man Powered Up, was I'm going to spoil it, it was my #1 pick for Mega Man for all the classic platformers. It's such a good remake, and it adds so much to this game that I think it deserves credit for being the finest classic Mega Man. Maybe Mega Man 11 will be even better next year, but I don't know. It's a tall order to fill, and it does seem kind of like nostalgia bait. It's, you know, like The Force Awakens. It's a new game that's all the old stuff. You love that, right? So at this point, you're working your way down the sort of exterior of the rightmost tower for Dr. Wily's lair, and to this boss, whom I really hate. Oh, wait. Next screen, okay. Oh, Mega Man, why did you jump into that bullet? Oh yeah, I got kind of lazy here, and I messed up. And that is why I'm going to lose the first fight against this boss. Because look at how much I've lost, 1/3 of my health. Terrible. Shameful. What's wrong with me? So this is where Mega Man fights himself, because the greatest enemy is the self. The true evil lies within the self, I believe, is the tag of Parasite Eve. Or the greatest threat? I don't know. Anyway, he is a little Mega Man who does exactly what you do, except he hits you way harder than you hit him. When you shoot him, you take away 1 point of health, and he takes away many. And also, you take damage when you collide. He does not. It's not fair. Mega Man or Dr. Wily is better at making Mega Man than Dr. Light is. Oh, and I jumped right into a bullet. Good times. I guess since this is a Let's Play that's all pre-recorded, I could go in and edit these things so that I look awesome, but I don't know. I'm okay showing the warts. I do wish that, you know, if you lose against this guy, you didn't have to go through this whole sequence all over again, but what can you do? So I think I mentioned in my Robot Voice stream that Mega Man's original name was going to be Rainbow Kid, because he changes colors when he uses different weapons. I'm really glad they didn't go with that name, because it sounds kind of goofy. Rainbows are just not the most threatening concept. They're colorful and, you know, they're full of promise, according to Noah and the Bible, but still. Mega Man is a little goofy as a name, but they had to change it from Rockman because Rockman is the name of a stereo company, and that would have been a trademark issue. So for whatever reason, they went with Mega Man. Which is okay, I guess, but it kind of caused some problems in Mega Man Legends, where everyone calls him by his actual name, which in Japan is, you know, he's Rockman, but everyone just calls him Rock. But here they call him Mega Man, and it's kind of goofy. Like, who would find an orphan child and say, your name is now Mega Man? Girl casket is a weird man. But you know, don't let that deter you from playing Mega Man Legends, because it's super great. If I had included Mega Man Legends games in my countdown for Polygon of the greatest Mega Man games, the rankings, Mega Man Legends 1 would appear way up there. It's so good. I missed that game. I'm so sad they never made Mega Man 3. Alright, so here's the part that reprises the Hallway and Iceman stage. Check it out, here comes the birds. Yep, there they are. So I think the idea here is that it's supposed to be flooded and you're underwater. They didn't change up the water physics, so it's kind of hard to say, but you're being, like, pressed forward by a flow of water, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the penguins become bullets. It's pretty dark, pretty gruesome, ominous. And I'm kind of running out of things to say here. I feel like I've chattered about this game enough. Let's see if there's anything that I'm overlooking. In the meantime, I will let you enjoy the battle with Bubble Boy, which I take on with great aplomb in just a moment, once I get past these bullets. Oh, not cool. So one thing that should be said about Mega Man is that I think in my previous stream I called it like the last great second-gen NES game. So, you know, the first-gen NES games were the black box games, the single-screen games. Then Super Mario Bros. Kind of really kicked off the second generation in earnest. And so the next 2 years of games were people trying to build on Mega Man. This is one of the first games that really, I feel, did a great job, and on a technical level and in terms of creativity and overall design and control, actually came close to living up to the excellent example of Super Mario Brothers. There were a lot of games that meant well, but they didn't do so great. So Mega Man is pretty nice and remarkable for that, but the cartridge that it shipped on was one of the older ROMs, I think the U-ROM, and maybe the N-ROM, I don't know. But in any case, it didn't have many capabilities beyond the basics of what the NES could, the hardware could do. And future Mega Man games would ship on the memory mapper chips, which would provide more storage space, more memory, the ability to do bank switching. Some of the games that shipped on the MMC3 chip had the ability to do crazy stuff with background graphics. Like you start to see things like the Guts Dozer tank and the giant dragon in Mega Man 2, and those are kind of the set pieces but they really show, you know, what the newer cartridges could do. So I feel like this game does really as much as you could do within the capacity, the capabilities of the older chips. And I hope I'm not talking out my ass here, because I'm pretty sure I'm right about all that. Oh, I forgot to recharge my magnet beams, so I gotta stand here and wait until the platform comes. And this is a reprise of those horrible platforms in Gutsman's stage. This time over spikes, but they're just as deadly as pits. Anyway, yeah, this game accomplishes a lot with the limited capabilities on offer. I can't believe I pulled off that jump without dying. That's kind of remarkable. And I am proud to have been a Mega Man fan from the very original game. It did kind of run out of steam sometimes and lose its creativity, but what can you do? Anyway, so now you get to see the fire, the hyperstorm, the hyper cannon, whatever the hell the fire thing is called. You get to see that against Bomb Man, and as you can see, it makes very short work of him. Unfortunately, there's no way to really quickly and efficiently dispatch Fireman. Even the weapon he's weak to takes quite a few hits to take him out, and he gets to fire that stupid flame weapon at you that creates the little fire ball under your feet, which I really hate. So he always is kind of like the really rough point in this battle, but if you time it right, you can take out Iceman before his slashers get to you, and then that just means you have to beat Gutsman, which isn't too hard as long as he doesn't get up all in your face. It is a little more difficult because you don't have a platform to elevate you above the chunks that he throws at you, which sucks. But yeah, okay, so I took out all 4 bosses in the final gauntlet before facing Dr. Wily. And here we go, Dr. Wily. Spoilers, I'm not going to beat him on my first attempt. By golly, I give it the old college try. So I actually got confused about which weapons I should use here. The best weapons against Dr. Wily's machine. He has 2 phases. First phase is weak against the fire beam, and the second is weak against the elect beam. I kind of realized that midway through and switch over. But, you know, I started this battle with like half health, so what do you want from me? It's actually pretty easy to beat this first phase, but the second phase has some cheap attacks that hit really hard, are really hard to avoid, and there's, oh, see, I even tried to do the cheat thing. Yeah, you can see the cheat there. It took a couple of hits against him. But that's just not my style. That's my style. That's right. Getting blown up. So yeah, this is kind of the Mega Man tradition. Every Mega Man game has been like this. You fight the stages, then go to Dr. Wily's stage. At the very end, you fight a gauntlet of the bosses again, and then you take on Dr. Wily and his multi-phase machine. So there's a lot that they did here in 1987 that would become part of a formula that would last for decades. So you kind of have to be impressed with that. That's no lightweight achievement. Anyway, the Hyperstorm is great because if you get really close to that weak point, the gun that he's firing, the thing that spins around you when you fire I'm calling it Hyperstorm. That's right? Yeah? Okay. That thing is really effective against him. So it's really hard to dodge that circle cannon spinning thing when it's up close, but when you've got some distance, it's much easier to get a little clearance. So then you can hit him with the elect beam, and that actually, because it's so wide, sometimes it will just hit his machine twice without you even having to pause. Look at that. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, that's it. Goodbye, Dr. Wily. Okay, so that was a complete playthrough of the original Mega Man. I have no idea if this format where I'm talking about gameplay but not actually playing, talking over my own footage, is a good format or not, but at least it is an attempt to do something worthwhile, I hope, to celebrate Mega Man's 30th anniversary. So yeah, that's great. Mega Man is 30 years old, and that really freaks me out because I have been playing it since the original. It means I'm a very old man now. And yes, he is going to continue fighting for everlasting peace. Fight, Mega Man, fight. We can talk a little bit about the staff here. I mentioned Manami Matsumae, who shows up here as Chan Koren or something like that. There was another guy who composed, and I can't remember his full name. But the other notable people who worked on this game are Tokuro Fujiwara, who was the creator of Commando, Ghost and Goblins. He was kind of like the big superstar. First there's AK, Akira Kitamura. He was actually the director and designer. I guess Yasukichi, maybe that's Tokuro Fujiwara? I don't know. I didn't bother to look it up. But yeah, Fujiwara was kind of Capcom's big game design star. That's Keiji Inafune right there, Inaf King. And after creating those really great games, they were like, hey, you should be in charge of all of our games that we create, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he oversaw this game, and this was one of the first games created by Capcom's internal console game design division. They had been an arcade-focused company until this point, and I think, the success of the Famicom and NES made them say, let's put some resources into making a game for the home. And so there you have it. Not just the beginning of Capcom, or not the beginning of, just the beginning of Mega Man here in 1987, but also in a way of Capcom. So, yeah, that's great. Very exciting. Mega Man, very old now, and me too. So I hope you have enjoyed my rambling. I will be back again with some kind of video for Retronauts. Please enjoy. Go visit retronauts.com. Watch my other YouTube videos. I don't care. Just, enjoy. That's the important thing.